Welcome back to another question and answer session here at Silicon Dojo. So basically during these sessions I answer questions that people leave in the comment section. So if you want me to answer one of your questions in the comment section down below, ask your question, and then every day I go down there, I take a look for interesting questions and I try to answer them. So this question comes from HW. What is the difference between a career and a job? Should I feel badly if I only have a job and not a career? Should you feel badly? Here's the thing, boys and girls. Well, we'll go with the second question first, is I am not here to really beat you up, nor frankly offer you validation at this point in time. I do find this to be an interesting thing with a lot of folks nowadays, is that they are desperately looking for validation. Tell me I'm doing it right, or tell me I'm doing it wrong, and then tell me what I should do. That's not my game. That's not how I play the game of life. I am here to explain to you folks how the world operates, and then you folks need to figure out how that makes you feel. I can't tell you whether you should be happy about having a job or sad about having a job. I can't tell you whether you should be happy about having a career or sad about having a career. I can't tell you whether or not the decisions that you're making are the right ones or the wrong ones. The decisions that you're making are decisions. They will have consequences. Some of the consequences will be good, and some of the consequences will be bad. How is the math on that when you think about it? What is the overall outcome? How do you feel about the consequences of the decisions that you've made? That's really up to you. Everybody is different there. So if you have anybody out there that is trying to make you feel bad because of the decisions that you've made, just realize you're the only one that gets to decide whether you feel happy or bad about the decisions that you've made. You're the one that has to decide whether what you've done was a good idea or not so good idea. Again, you think about this like with a job. Like a lot of people would think, having a career is the good thing to do, and having a job is just, well, that's just a waste of time. But you think about it, right? Let's say you have somebody that you have to take care of. Let's say you have a parent that has some kind of medical condition, or a spouse that has some kind of medical condition, and so you just need to pay the bills, right? You need to go out there and you need to just do a job in order to pay the bills. You may not want to have to worry about a career at that point in time. You don't have to worry about somebody calling you at midnight or calling you during the weekends because you're just so darn important for the organization. There are a lot of times in life where it's very useful to go to work at whatever your start time is, do your job, and then leave whenever your quitting time is, and then not have to worry about that anymore, right? You have more important things to be thinking about. So when you think about things like careers and jobs, don't automatically feel like it's a bad idea to have a job, and it's only a good thing if you have a career. It really depends on what your situation is and what your aspirations are and all of that types of thing. So the first part of this question, what is the difference between a career and a job? Basically, a career is the overall your experience that you're going to have as a professional for your working life. A job is simply a job. So what do I mean by that? So basically, like if you look at my career, so I have been a career technology professional. Back in 1996, I started in the US Army doing electronic repair, wound up in the corporate world during the dot-com boom, wound up doing a consulting company after the dot-com bust, wound up on YouTube somehow, and now I'm creating this thing called Silicon Dojo. So this is my career. A career is made up of the many jobs that you will have, and it generally shows some type of progression. You would hope it shows progression. Some people don't always get that, right? So whenever you're thinking about whatever it is that you're going to try to do in life, it is important to be thinking about there's a difference between a job, a career, and your profession. These are actually separate things, right? So the profession is, I am a technology professional. As a technology professional, I have a tremendous number of skills. I know how to administer Windows NT 4. If anybody says, does anybody out there know how to do trust relationships in a Windows NT 4 architecture? I might be able to remember how to do that, right? So as a professional, my skill set is everything from Army electronics, comms equipment, to Windows NT4, to what are called Definity systems, telephone systems, to digital surveillance systems, to creating content, the whole nine yards, right? As a professional, I have all of these different skill sets. The important thing to understand, though, is when I go and get hired for a job, that job is only going to require me to do certain things. So let's say with everything that I know, I get hired somewhere to be a PHP coder. So if I become a PHP coder, they're not going to need me to deal with telephone systems. They're not going to have me deal with digital surveillance systems. They may not have me do any kind of educational things or anything like that. My job, the job task, is to be a coder. And so one of the reasons people get very frustrated in the modern world is, wait for it, they've been lied to, and they believe that their job is supposedly it's supposed to give them their reason for being on this planet, right? It's supposed to give them their motivation and everything else. The important thing to understand is your job, as far as the company is concerned, is you are a widget, you are a cog in the system that is producing something that either makes the overall system more efficient or makes the overall system more profitable. And so one of the reasons people get really sad is they realize that they're going to go and they're going to do their job, and basically day in, day out, they're going to do the exact same kind of work, because for a business or an organization, you need people to come in and just do that type of work. I had a buddy of mine way back when who was a high-level systems or Linux administrator for a government contractor. And I was surprised when he left that highly paid job to come work for the company that I was working for. And I was like, why would you ever leave a job like that? And he said, it's Linux. We set it up right the first time, and so basically we only have ever had an hour of work to do a day, right? Because so think about it. For this contract, for this government contractor, they needed to make sure that the Linux systems were up 24/7. The reality is that if you set up Linux systems right the first time, and you actually buy the right hardware, and you have the right software and maintenance agreements and all that kind of stuff, Linux should basically stay up 99.999% of the time. But for the company, right, if there is a weird failure, if there is a weird quirk, if for some reason the database cluster goes down, they need to have people on staff, so as soon as that cluster fails, those people can go and start trying to fix it. Well, the problem that it runs into for a lot of people when they get their jobs is, for this person, he literally was saying he did 1 hour work a day. He said he would go in for an 8-hour shift, he would do 1 hour of work, and then he would sit there playing cards with the rest of the people on the team. There's a team playing cards, right? Because their job was to make sure that the Linux systems stayed up and running, right? And so this is one of the places where people can get very frustrated. Again, if you get a job running cable, you may have, other skill sets. You may know how to build websites and do coding and do a whole bunch of other things, but Comcast or Verizon or Qwest or AT&T, they don't really care. They need cables run from point A to point B. You're going to run this cable from point A to point B, and that cable from point C to point D, and that cable from point M to point N. And when you get all of that done, you're going to show up to the next job site and do the same thing over again, because cables need to get run from point A to point B. And so an important thing to understand about your job is supposed to be a set of relatively defined tasks with relatively well-defined goals and an understanding of why it is that you are actually working for the company. I think this is one of the big problems a lot of technology companies have at this point in time, is they have had so much investment, they've had so much money coming in, that they've been able to hire a lot of staff without defining what the hell these people's jobs actually are supposed to be. And so unfortunately, you then have a lot of people that have ill-defined jobs, that have ill-defined goals, that aren't really sure why they're getting paid an absolutely ridiculous amount of money, and then you start to get a lot of insanity at those companies. Just saying. I honestly do believe it's a big issue there. So your job is to go in and you're supposed to do a specific thing. Again, if you think about, like with Silicon Dojo, what my job really is for Silicon Dojo, at least right at this point in time, is I'm figuring out classes. I'm figuring out basically one class to do every week on Thursday. And so I figure out what technology I want to talk about and why I think it's important. I then sit there and I research the technology. I then create the demos. I then create the keynote presentation so that I can present everything. And then on Thursday I come in and I actually, give the presentation, right? That's my job. Professionally, I can do a whole bunch of things that I'm not necessarily bringing to the table when I do my specific job. So when we're talking about jobs, you are just simply doing a task that brings value to the company. That's not a bad word. That's not a bad word. That's how it works in the real world. Then what you need to be thinking about is what is your career going to look like. And so the career are going to be all the jobs and all the professional opportunities you have along the way for your working life. And so this is an important thing I try to explain to people about why you need to be thinking about 5 years down the road for what you want to be doing, because the reality is, like, let's say you're 18 or 19 years old right now and you start paid like $15 an hour to swap hard drives. As an 18 or 19-year-old getting paid $15 an hour to swap hard drives, this probably seems amazing to you. This probably seems awesome to you. Here's the thing. This is what happens to everybody. It's going to be a lot less awesome in 2 years. And a hell of a lot less awesome in 3 years. And in 5 years, it's going to start to suck, right? Because when you do things day after 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 year after year, it just gets to be, most people gets to be tiring. And so that's why you want to have a career progression. You think about this in the normal IT world, and you look at the career production of you have help desks, right? So help desk calls come in. You basically route the calls to somebody that can actually solve the problem. You learn a little bit about what you're doing. You may be making a decent amount of money doing help desk, but the idea is that the help desk is a job, and then the next step in your career progression is then to go to desktop support. So desktop support, you take all that experience, all that education that you had, and then you go out and you actually start working on people's computer systems actually at their desks. As you do that, as you start to understand Active Directory, as you start to understand networking and all that kind of stuff more, maybe then you move to a junior level admin. So as a junior level admin, you probably stop swapping hard drives and doing a lot of that stuff, but you do a lot more with, group policies and permissions and doing that kind of thing. And then you go to be a normal level admin, and then you go to be a senior level admin. So senior level admin starts designing what the new architecture should be and all that. And then past that, you might go to project management, you might become a team leader, you might become a manager, you might become a CIO, you might become a CTO. And then once you become a CIO or a CTO, you may do that for a number of years. You put a lot of money in the bank and you think, okay, well, I've done this. Now what am I going to do? And you might go off and try to become a professor somewhere, right? And so that is the career progression that you should have. And so this is something to be thinking about. It's like when you start getting bored as a professional, when you start getting bored of the job that you're doing or frustrated or whatever, you should be thinking about what is the next step on the career ladder that is going to make me more valuable as I go into the future. So again, maybe you're sitting there and you're swapping hard drives, or you're doing help desk, you're talking with people about what are the valuable skill sets in the technology world, and then somebody tells you, coding, learn Python or Java or something else, right? As you're doing that work, then you start learning coding. That might get you off down the developer route. So you go down the developer route, and maybe you become a front-end developer or a back-end developer. Maybe you become a full-stack developer. As you start doing that, maybe you start going into more project management type stuff. Then as you start doing that, you see the value, you have an idea, so then you become a founder, you become a CEO to create a company, right? That is your career path. And I think one of the big problems I see with a lot of young folks nowadays is they look at their job and they don't look at their career. Your career is going to be a hell of a lot more fulfilling than your job, right? Because your job is just your job, right? You are there to put it to just shove widgets out the door essentially. If you think about this is the job until I have a better job, till 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 I have a better job. That's something that can make you feel a lot more fulfilled. And then you start thinking about yourself as a professional, and then you realize all of the things that you can do as a professional that are outside your specific organization or business. So let's say, as a professional, you realize that you do like training people. You're not good enough, or there's maybe not a position where you can actually get paid for it, but you do like doing training. So maybe you go and you start doing meetups. So outside of your job, or technically your career, you start doing meetups and you start showing people how to develop things in whatever coding language that you like to develop. Or let's say you're really into Python, or again, some specific technology, and so you start to become like a lead, to try to become a leader in the field of that technology. You start writing blog posts, you start doing videos, you start going to the specific conferences for that type of technology, and that is professional development, because that is outside the whole job work. You are becoming within the industry, you are then becoming a thought leader. And a lot of times, again, this can be very fulfilling to you, because since there's not technically a bottom line, a specific bottom line here, you can go off and you can do the work, and you can just accept the enjoyment of doing the work. Hey, look, I figured out how to do something. Or hey, look, I trained somebody in how to use this particular technology. Or hey, look, I wrote this book, or whatever else. That's something that can also give you fulfillment at the end of the day. So that's kind of an overview of the difference between what a job is, what a career is, and what your profession is. I think so many people nowadays, they misunderstand what these different words are. And so one of the reasons that they're so frustrated, and one of the reasons that they're just so tired and angry all the time, is because, again, they're trying to put too much emphasis in that job, right? So again, think about this. If you have a crappy job, if you're running cable or swapping hard drives, and you're frustrated, you don't feel like you're getting anywhere, again, the big question I ask is, well, what are you doing when you get home at night? Right? So if you're doing a job to pay the bills, and that's the best job you can get, and then you go home at night, and then you're building additional product checks, you're playing with things, you're learning new technologies, that can add to the fulfillment that you're lacking in your specific job. Not only does that add to the fulfillment that you're lacking in a specific job, but then you're gaining the skills to hopefully get a better job to move your career forward. And then you get that better job to move your career forward. And again, you start reading, you start experimenting, you start playing with other things. Again, from a professional level, you're gaining your professional skill set. And then hopefully that will allow you to get another job in your career. And you keep going, you keep going, you keep going, you keep going. So many folks, they kind of feel like the job is just like this bubble. In the job, I'm going to learn everything that I need to progress further. In the job, it's going to somehow fulfill me. In the job, it's going to do all these other things. And so many times that's not what the job really offers. Like, think about that even with Silicon Dojo is, again, simply doing the presentations, doing the classes, doing the videos. A lot of this kind of stuff really isn't that fulfilling. What I find fulfilling is actually talking with people in the real world. So right before I did this video, there's somebody that came here who's a developer who has a lot of resources that is very interested in Silicon Dojo, and we were able to shoot the crap for about an hour and a half, right? Because of my job, because of what I am doing here at Silicon Dojo, this makes me valuable enough that people then come in the door to have conversations about technology that aren't necessarily specifically about Silicon Dojo. This over here is what I actually find to be very enjoyable, and this is one of the things that I find to be very fulfilling. In order to get this thing over here, though, I need to have some kind of importance. Again, like one of the big things nowadays is this idea like everybody is important, everybody needs to be listened to. Again, do realize from a decision maker standpoint that decision makers can't listen to everybody. There's just too many people. There's 8 billion people on the planet. If you're going to give everybody a say on everything, nothing is going to happen. Everybody's going to lose their minds, right? For decision makers, they need to know why when they're talking to you it matters. Are you just some kind of aspirational person? Have you created something? Are you creating something, right? That's the kind of thing that actually gives you value so that they think it's worthwhile to communicate with you, and they think it's worthwhile to offer you resources. If you're just kind of just sitting there just doing your job, head down to the grindstone, not thinking about anything else, then you don't pop up on anybody's radar. And then why should they pay attention to you? Why should they have a cup of coffee with you? Again, I think this is a big thing. I have a lot of folks out there, again, they want me to be their mentor. They want me to be their advisor. Unless you're in Asheville. If you're in Asheville and you come to Silicon Dojo, I'll give you my time. But otherwise, right? But like with a lot of these folks out there, there's this idea of what they will do. Eli, the reason you need to be my mentor, the reason that you need to be my advisor is not because of what they're doing, but when I get my CCNA, when I get my A+, when I do something. And the problem is, like, if you're not actually doing something, then what is the value? What is the value proposition there? Why is somebody going to sit down with you and take their time and take their energy to explain how the world works if you're not actually out there trying to do something? So these are some things to be thinking about. And the other part, the other thing, the useful thing about this too is, again, when you start thinking about, like, from professionally, so you have a job. So what if you're unemployed? Eli, I'm unemployed. I don't have a job. And so your career is stuck in neutral, right? But then you can look at your profession. Well, even if you don't have a job, if you're working on your professional skill set, okay, I don't know who's going to hire me for how much or where, but I know that coding is a valuable thing. So I'm going to spend the next couple of months, learning how to do Python or learning how to do Java or whatever else, right? That increases your professional skill set, so to also help you try to get a job. Or if you're learning these things on your own, again, when you want to go out and talk to a developer, you're like, hey, I've been studying my butt off, for Python or whatever else. Can I buy you a coffee or can I buy you a beer and pick your brain for how I can actually get a job with the skills that I've had? Right? Those are some things to be thinking about. And I think if you start separating out the concepts between job, career, and profession, and you start looking at the concepts as the separate things that they are, that work together synergistically, I think you'll wind up being more successful in life. And the one thing that I will definitely tell you is don't look for validation from anybody else. I could lie to you. I could lie to you so much. I could make so much money. Again, I had a buddy of mine, they literally were a cult recruiter. I actually understand some of the science behind how cults work. That's one of the reasons, one of my pet peeves in this whole validation thing, I'm not your mom or your daddy, because I realized how much I could screw you. I could screw so many of you so hard and make so much money if I was just willing to use a couple of lessons my buddy explained to me how they work well in the real world. And one of the big things that you're going to find is that so many people are so desperate for the validation, they will sell their souls and they will sell almost everything that they have in order to get that validation. And at the end of the day, they will no longer have anything and they'll get validation from a moron and that's it. They won't have a job, they won't have a career, they won't have a profession, but they'll have validation. So stop looking for validation from people. Again, stop looking for validation from people. Looking for validation from people is just a bad way to go. And the people that are going to give it to you, they are most likely going to manipulate you, and they're going to be the ones profiting from that particular exchange. So anyways, some things to think about there. Some things to think about. If you want to ask me a question, again, put your questions down in the comment section down below. If you would like to support Silicon Dojo, you can go to donorbox.org/ETCG. Again, link is also down below. You can help support free to the end user, hands-on technology education here in Asheville, North Carolina. Hopefully, we'll be upgrading to a bigger room at some point. Don't worry, there's lots of office space here. Our last office space fell through, but I'm very confident we will be able to find a different office space in the future. So anyways, we do need your support for me to be able to offer these things free to the end user. If you would like a one-on-one conversation with me, again, I do one-on-one conversations in person here in Asheville, North Carolina. If you go to silicondojo.com, on the right-hand side, there's one-on-one meetings. You can sign up for one there, and you can come here, and I'll give you an hour to 3, depending on how long you need. If you'd like to come to the meetups, in my timeline, I'm about to do the Twilio meetup. So last week I did Easy Computer Vision using Azure and AWS. This week I'm doing Twilio. The week before I did DNS for cybersecurity. Basically every week I'm doing these education seminars. So if you want to come to those, make sure, and you're in the Asheville area, make sure to sign up for those in the meetup section. And I think that's about all I have to say for the day. So with that, I enjoyed answering this question, and I look forward to seeing you here, hopefully in Asheville, North Carolina, to come to one of the programs we offer here at Silicon Dojo.